Hello and welcome to episode Nintendo 64 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all of the things Nintendo. My name is Kevin, and with me this week in Termina to talk about Majora's Mask, Expansion Pass, and Nintendo's trash is Sean
What did Skull Kid do to Epona?
and Harrison.
Hey guys, welcome back.
So I had a question that I thought of this week. Question for the group. We're going to get right into it. Can a game have too much content? Because what made me think of this is I'm wondering if I'll ever play Tears of the Kingdom again after how much I've been playing it over the last year. Because there's so much in this game, and I feel like it's intimidating to pick up a game like that for another playthrough. And on top of that, I've been hearing a lot about how big Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is, and it is also like intimidating me to start it. I've heard people literally say things like, I spent 15 hours in the first town alone, like things like that. I'm like, wow, what? Like, there's a lot to do in this game, I guess. So, yeah, that's my question.
I was thinking about it. I'll let Harrison do his thing because I agree with him, but I think part of it is just there's too much now. Like, you don't have time. You know, if we were kids, maybe we wouldn't feel that way necessarily. Like, I don't know. There's just too much everything now.
Yeah, you're right, because I was thinking about, while obviously I said that the Tears of the Kingdom thing led to this thought process, and there comes a point in a playthrough where I start to resent the game for not being over yet because of my backlog.
Right.
And it's like, it's not the game's fault that I have a lot of other things to get to. So I don't know. It was just a thought I had. What were you going to say, Harrison?
I just don't think it matters. I mean, to your original question, can the game have too much content? Of course. That I think describes a lot of modern games. But as far as it impacting in general, impacting the overall level of a game, the overall like how good a game is, content doesn't matter to me. It's all about execution, I think. I had this yeah.
Go ahead.
But I'll finish by saying I had a conversation with a friend recently who said, like, you know, like, I don't, like, he said, like, I only play like long games, like, you know, like The Witcher or Skyrim or, you know, something like that. And I understand that, you know, because then you get the most out of your money. But to me, it's never really mattered, because when I look at my favorite games, some are extremely short, and I've played them hundreds of times.
Exactly. Yeah, the replay thing, I feel like I've seen people online just ignore, because obviously, being a Mario RPG fan, when that game came out, it was getting slammed for how short it was. And I'm like, yeah, but I know I'm going to play this game like 100 times.
Yeah. I understand. It's a great topic, because overall, I think my biggest criticism of modern games is lack of focus, and then doing a lot of things but not doing one thing in particular like really well. So of course it's always good. It's always better to do one thing really well than try to do 1,000 things that are not good.
Yeah,
so that's
and also
something
minimize the amount of padding or like fluff you have in there of, like, you know, bloat, whatever you want to call it. Just like a good example, just back to Tears of the Kingdom, is how long it takes to get the full map in the underworld. It to me feels like padding. It's so much for so little reward. But go on, Sean.
Well, I was going to say that's something I've noticed with the Souls-like genre, is the ones I try that are in that vein, they either get it dead on or they just miss the mark and you're wasting your time. And those games take a lot of time to get through, no matter, I mean, really, I know the Crab one just came out and I'm really curious to try it out. And
Oh, yep.
I've heard it's a little more simplistic and easier, but I mean, it looks like it's silly too. But I just find that genre particularly like some of them do it very well, and then some of them it does feel like padding, and it's just like, is this just adding more to add more, and that's it? So I think that's why I lose interest in big games like that. Is I just don't commit after a while because I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm doing anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the game, depends on the yes. With execution comes like how you can approach the game and your own play style. Like for example, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, or at least Breath of the Wild, has it in a way that like you can you can make the game short, you can make the game long, you can approach a game however you want. So I think the amount of content doesn't matter because if you want to 100% it, you can have fun for over 100 hours. If you want to do the main game, you can do 20 or 30 hours. I do think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I do think Nintendo has a fundamental issue with how they approach the replayability of their games, and I think it's kind of a big issue as well. I was thinking recently, because I've played Breath of the Wild, so I've played it so much. Why isn't there an option that will just drop me in a random part of the map at the beginning of the
Oh
game?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I don't I don't need to do the four shrines anymore. Like, why isn't there an option after you finish a game one time? Maybe you have to finish
I
a game first.
I
That,
think that's been a problem with them for a while because I know I've complained about this going all the way back to Ocarina of Time. Is that first area in Ocarina of Time is so annoying when you've played the
so
game
annoying.
before and it's teaching you like how to open a door.
Yeah.
It's
So
like I
annoying.
don't need this lesson.
Yeah, it would be great. Like, I love Breath of the Wild, but why don't you just give me the parasail? Give
Yeah,
me
not make you do the plateau every time you boot it
what
up.
am I looking? What am I looking for? Give me the flying thing,
Yeah, you
not
want the glider.
the paraglider. Give me the paraglider. Drop me in a random spot of the map, and let me figure it out.
Yeah.
And like I don't want to do 2 hours, and that's what I'm afraid about with Tears of the Kingdom because, as you said, Kevin, Tears of the Kingdom is even longer
Yeah.
to
And
start
it's
out.
funny because you wrote at the end here, what's your favorite long game? And I honestly think, even though it made me think of this topic, Tears of the Kingdom might be becoming my favorite long game. Despite, and I'm almost done with my review. I'm almost done with my second playthrough. I'd say it's probably going to come out next month. And yeah, I've got plenty to say about Tears of the Kingdom there, but short story long. I love the game. It's great. It just does have a little bit of bloat in it and a little bit of unusual choices that they made.
Sean, how about you? What's your favorite long game?
So I think on Switch it's Skyrim because I always go back to it, but it also has that same problem of if you want to start a new character, you got to do the whole Helgen escape thing at the
You're
beginning,
awake.
and it's just
Mhm.
like, oh, why can't we just skip this and get
Yeah.
into it? So I think that's a modern gaming problem because it's not. I don't. I don't know because if it goes back to Ocarina, I'm wondering when that became a thing where you basically can't skip the tutorial because
Well, Nintendo doubled down on it as they went. I think they've gotten a little better over the years, but I remember if you follow the Zelda progression, um, the original release of Twilight Princess was it Twilight Princess or was it Skyward? It was Twilight Princess. So in the original Twilight Princess release, um, it literally every time you booted that game up treated you like you were coming back from having not played the game in months. And like literally if you were opening your file, it would re-explain what every single item was when you picked it up. And they fixed that in the HD version. It doesn't do that anymore. But like that was, I think, the peak of Nintendo not understanding we don't want to see this 100 times. It would re-explain what a blue rupee was worth. It would re-explain like what the little collectibles did every
Yeah,
single
yeah.
time you reopened your file.
So I think that's what, because you're both right. I mean, it's great if a game has a lot of content, but if it's not well done, it doesn't matter. But if there's no replayability to it, I guess it doesn't really matter so much because you're only going to be going through it the one time. Like The Witcher 3 is a great game, but I'd never play it again. Like
Yeah.
it was
No, I know what you
100
mean.
plus hours or whatever.
I felt that way about most Fallout games, which topical right now. But yeah, I played it. I'm done. I don't need to see what's in every single drawer and cabinet in this world.
But I think part of it too is we grew up in a different time where you had to make your own fun in games too, because they didn't necessarily have a ton of content.
That's
So
true, and
how
that's where all those rumors stem from of like how you get the Triforce in Ocarina of Time and stuff like that.
So you start doing silly stuff to entertain yourself, and I think Minecraft and those type of games have filled that void for modern gaming. But at the same time, I kind of wish that it was still a thing. I mean, I guess some people do it with doing specific runs and things, but I don't think it's quite the same.
Honestly, Minecraft is where because I've been helping out on a server this week. Like, Minecraft is where I had like my like that idea of like because like when you start a Minecraft game, like it's so exciting just to like be dropped down somewhere and like the world hasn't even rendered in. It's actually like a bit random, I guess, when you actually start flying around, and like, and yeah, like it, like just, I mean, if you've played Breath of the Wild, I'm sure a couple of times, then like you're probably gonna know which direction to go to, but like, yeah, that's where the inspiration came from.
Okay, so Sean, did you want to talk about I think you put this in here. Wrath of the Mutants?
I didn't put that in there.
Maybe Harrison did.
I've played it if you guys want to talk about it, but I didn't put it in there.
Did you think it was too easy?
So it is probably the easiest of the arcade games I've played. And apparently also the dog. Oh, for God's sakes. But yeah, I think you appreciate the game more if you like that version of the Turtles. Because there's a lot of little nods in it that I really liked. Like one of the power-ups is you throw a cooler.
So it's more about the journey than the, I guess not the destination, but like, yeah, it's more about like it being an interactive showpiece for stuff for the 2012 series.
Yeah, so you throw a cooler and Ice Cream Kitty attacks all the enemies on screen. So there's little things like that on it I like a lot. And it has 12 bosses, even though there's only 6 levels. So it's kind of cool that there's 2 bosses per level. So that was a little different. But I mean, it's a lot. I would even argue it's more simplistic than the actual original arcade games were, as far as like you just really punch and attack, and then each turtle has a like special move, which those are like Mikey will throw pizza at everybody. So I mean, it's got some good stuff in it, and like I said, if you like that version of the series, I think you'll get more out of it because you're fighting the Squirrelinoids or Krang subprime or whatever, so you kind of enjoy that end of it. But there are weird things about it, like it doesn't seem to really have music during the levels, which is really, really bizarre. And it has like this really awful like slideshow almost at the end instead of like the actual kind of cartoon stuff they would do in the original games. Is it too much? Yeah, it's absolutely too much for what it is. But
too much money, you mean?
Too much money.
Yeah, like that. But my whole thing too is that the company that made Cruise and Blast, which is only available on Switch and in arcades.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know that.
They're really good at angering my dog. they're really good at arcade stuff, so it works on that level. And like I could see kids who grew up on that series and played the game in the arcade and be like, "Oh, awesome! I can own it now." So yeah, but it's I think the mileage is really determined on your love of the turtles, and then doubly so your love of that version.
So we started episode with games with too much content is are more turtles always better because
I mean, it's
we're
Too little
fun.
content. Yeah. Now we're on that.
It's fun, and it's just, I mean, theoretically, by the end of the year, there'll be at least 5 turtle games available on Switch. So that's kind of
that
cool.
that's what I meant. I mean as far as just like how many turtle games are going to be just on one console
I'm
is
okay with
more.
I mean, I don't remember if it was this show or Ninja Turtle Nerds I brought this up on, probably Ninja Turtle Nerds, but I would honestly like to start seeing more variety in how they make the Turtles games. Like we talked about that the third Game Boy game is kind
Mm.
of a Metroidvania, and we need more like outside the box stuff like that
So that's
versus.
why Splintered Fate intrigues me, because it's a roguelite.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, see stuff like
And
that. We need more than just arcade style beat 'em ups. We have like
and the
7 of
Mutant
them.
Mayhem game sounds like it's more like the original NES game. So those sound different. So yeah, I mean, if you're sick of beat 'em ups, that's most of the Cowabunga collection, and it was Shredder's Revenge.
Yep.
And you might not enjoy Wrath of the Mutants so much because it's that genre in its most simple form.
Well, I feel like they're in a tough spot because the Ninja Turtle version of Ocarina of Time or GoldenEye is Turtles in Time. Like when they're trying to get the casual player to also buy
Yeah.
their game, everyone's like, "Oh, I remember
Mhm.
Turtles in Time when I was a kid." So they
Mhm.
try to recreate that over and over and over again, and I'm like, it's time to move on. It's time.
I think I don't know how it's been on Apple Arcade, but I think Splintered Fate's going to be is going to be pretty successful because I think it'll run well, and
Yeah.
also like it's got it looks like it has the perfect roguelike elements of like short and long term like it has a lot of collectibles that you can get long term, but there's
Yep.
also a good mix of things of upgrades you can get within the game as well, and like if we're talking replayability, like I think roguelike is like the
Right.
ultimate replayability genre. Like if it's solid, like you can play it forever,
Right.
or you can always um, go back to it. You know, I've been I've also been thinking lately too, because I've been thinking a lot about Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom lately. I like in Breath of the Wild we had Eventide Island, which is always the last thing that I do in the game, and we had the that master quest that's in the Lost Woods where you have to go through like it's almost like these like dungeon trials, and you start with
Oh
nothing,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you start with nothing, and you have to like get your armor and upgrade, and it gets gradually harder and harder. Why is there not a Zelda roguelike? Just like, and again, if we're talking about just like randomly generated or like dropping you into an area that's just like just random.
Well, Nintendo has really just started playing with the Zelda formula recently, so maybe someday they'll get to that. I think the answer to that though is because they were making the same game over and over again for so long. Like
Yeah.
every game after A Link to the Past was kind of a version of it. So,
Because
yeah,
I love that concept of like I have finished everything in the game. I am way too powerful. So now I'm gonna go do this thing where now I'm now I have nothing, you know, and now I have to like
yep.
build it up gradually. And whenever it's over, I'm like, oh, I want to do it again, but it's over.
And that,
Uh,
yeah, that goes into replayability too. Is that, maybe that's because games are so story focused now too. I don't know. There's a lot of factors, I think.
were there any surprises with this Wrath of the Mutants? Was there any surprises for you?
I mean, just the little nods and things that they have in it, but as far no, it's just rescuing April from Shredder. It's nothing new on that front. So
But we do have some new additions to the expansion pack for Switch Online, so we can mention those real quick for this week. Moving into this category, we've got Extreme G and Iggy's Wrecking Balls are now live for Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack members. And of course, the internet is abuzz with why not Diddy Kong Racing? Why not Donkey Kong 64? That's all we're going to hear every Nintendo 64 update until we get them. Banjo-Tooie also in that conversation. And every Game Boy update, we're going to get why not Pokemon. Just every single time they update these services.
I mean, I thought it was cool because it's 2 more racing games, and I didn't really realize Iggy was a racing game. So,
but Iggy is like platforming also, or am I wrong? You jump, right?
It's like it's a platforming racing game. You're exactly right. Yeah, you jump. There's like hurdles.
It sounds like Uni Racers, kind of.
A little bit, yeah. Except you couldn't. I don't think you could fall off the track in Uniracers.
They could add that on there, but anyway. Yeah. I thought it was cool, and I'm looking forward to trying I thought it was funny, Harrison, that you were like, "Oh, this came out before F-Zero, the motorcycle racing game." So I was like, "Oh,
yeah." A lot of reviews that I read yesterday were like, initially they were saying like this should hold people over until F-Zero comes out, because I think
I haven't played it yet either.
So you guys haven't played either of these games?
Not yet. But I
played Iggy's Wrecking Balls. I haven't played Extreme G.
I've never played either of them. Iggy's Wrecking Balls just seems extremely 90s. So
yeah.
I'm
yes,
which
very
I'm
extreme.
So I'm I mean, I don't know, maybe we luck out and they show up on the thing already, but.
And now it comes that time for us to pit Nintendo's biggest mistakes against each other. If you're just joining us for this, last week we faced off 2 of Nintendo's biggest mistakes, and we're continuing the tournament, going down to determine at the end of this tournament what Nintendo's biggest mistake was. Last week we did lending Mario and Zelda to CDI versus Mortal Kombat not having any blood. And this week's entry into the tournament is the 3DS launch versus Nintendo 64 sticking with cartridges. Both fumbles for the company. Let me get into the details real quick, and then we can debate which one was a bigger mistake. So the 3DS launch. When one of your key titles in your system's launch is Steel Diver, you're probably in trouble.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot that was a Nintendo-made game.
Yep. And on top of that, the price point for the 3DS's launch was $250 when the Nintendo's home console, the Wii, was selling for only $150. The DS was only $150 at launch. And less than 6 months later, Nintendo dropped the price from $250 down to $170. So they knew it was a problem, like when you're having a price drop 6 months into your system's existence. And the 3DS did eventually recover with the price drop and some great titles, but the early days were kind of crazy. The eShop and the internet browser weren't available at launch. So on top of having almost no appealing games that weren't rehashes of old things, there were like you couldn't even use all the features yet. That came with an update.
Launch a system in modern times without the eShop.
It's happening. It happens all the time. Like Sean, like have you seen any videos recently of the Apple Vision Pro?
No.
Like it happens all the time. Like hardware comes out and the software isn't ready. The software or the software just isn't caught up.
Really?
Like for the time. So when I say it happens all the time, I think there's lots of similarities between Apple and Nintendo, which is a whole different story that we're not talking about this week. But
Yeah,
uh,
it is a thing. So
it is
the
a thing.
3DS launch's failure was not having all of its features available. Had a high price point. It was also unusual. I remember a lot of conversation at the time was Pokemon Black and White were released for the DS only 6 months earlier, and a lot of people were like, "Why isn't that a 3DS title? It would have been a huge system mover." So there's that whole thing versus the Nintendo 64 sticking with cartridges. So basically, the reason this was a problem for Nintendo is it cost them a lot of third party developers. The cartridges were expensive to produce. For example, a PlayStation 1 game, if it was being produced for PlayStation 1, the discs reportedly cost only $1 per copy to produce. So if you're selling a $60 game, you've got $59 worth of profit in there minus all the other stuff. But you know what I'm saying. Um, a Nintendo 64 cartridge costs $30 per copy. So you're losing almost half your profit margin there just to producing the cart. Nintendo maintains to this day it was the right choice to not only eliminate load times, because cartridges don't have load
Yeah.
times, but cartridges don't get scratched and they make piracy much harder. This decision likely cost them games like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid, and also prevented them from selling cheaper games. Some Nintendo 64 games were even retailing for $70 even then, when that would be like a $90 game today or whatever. So those two situations versus each other start the discussion.
Uh, I the 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 3DS, and I want to hammer home, Sean. Also, like you said, like how does it happen? Um, I'm I'm in agreement with you that it's just like it's ridiculous that it happens. Like I'm saying that it happens all the time, but when it does happen, it's still really really bad. And I think that would be a huge negative for the 3DS. And I mean, I'm gonna make it pretty obvious what my pick is here early on into the discussion. The 3DS price point, when you compare it to other Game Boy systems, makes it really really bad. Like the original Game Boy, $90. If you adjust it for inflation, it's a bit over $200 today. Game Boy Color came out apparently at $70. Is that right? That's ridiculous. Like looking back, it's no wonder that like I had these systems, because like I could have bought some of these systems when I was a kid just by saving up like a little bit of money here and there.
Yeah, the
Uh,
Game Boy Color basically cost what a Nintendo 64 game cost. It's like
Yeah.
that's cheap for a system.
using using Game Rant, using just their opinion, they ranked the top three best selling Nintendo consoles. Looking at price point, they ranked number one as Game Boy, which came out at $90, which is about $200 today. Game Boy Advance, which is $100, which is about $170 today. And then number three is Nintendo DS, which you said is $150, which is about $230 today. Um, the
Well, it
price
also like
point,
is hard to explain to a parent when they see on the shelves that the home console is $150 and the handheld is 250. It's kind of weird the situation they were in at the time.
right? And then last thing I'll say was Super Monkey Ball the biggest title they had at release.
I didn't
Because
even
I was
realize they had a launch Super Monkey Ball.
yeah, launch titles. So I had it up here. Launch titles for 3DS included Super Monkey Ball, included Sims 3. Because it had some third party ones. Wave Rayman 3D, Asphalt 3D, Bust a Move Universe, Madden NFL, Football, Pro Evolution Soccer, Lego Star Wars 3, The Clone Wars, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, and that's about it. So I think Super Monkey Ball might have been like the biggest title to actually launch.
Didn't it launch with a Street Fighter port also?
Street Fighter 4, yeah, but that was already out on a bunch of other systems, and it ran very poorly on the 3DS.
Oh, sorry, yes, it did. Street Fighter 4, yes.
So the thing that people most credit being the turning point for when the 3DS actually recovered is after the price drop. Around the time you get the price drop was also when Super Mario 3D Land came out, and it's almost like they should have just waited 6 months to release this system, because then you would have had the eShop ready, you would have had the internet browser ready, you would have had a Mario title for your launch, because like all these things happen like 6 months later. It's so weird. And they ended up having to do the ambassador program to, if you bought the system at the $250 price point, they gave you basically a free game when the price dropped to, kind of apologize. So it's just a weird, it's kind of like the next time they got in that situation was, I don't know if you remember this, but when the Wii U was struggling, they had a thing where if you bought Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, you got a free other first-party Nintendo title.
Yeah, they did that with a couple of things.
Right.
Like they had a bunch of games, and that was
for the Wii U, because the Wii U was struggling so bad. So if you're giving away like basically a buy one get one at that point for games that are not even a year old yet, that's crazy.
That's how I played a lot of stuff on Wii U I wouldn't normally have played because of that deal. They kept it going a while.
But back to the 3DS, yeah. So there's that whole situation. I think I'm siding with Harrison on this in the 3DS, because the thing is, yes, the cartridges were a mistake for Nintendo 64. They eliminated the load times and helped with piracy, but they were costly, and they cost them a lot of third-party developers. Think of the fact that Squaresoft would have stuck with Nintendo had they not, chosen to go the cartridge route. I'm not saying we would have gotten the same game, Final Fantasy VII, but they probably still would have maintained that Final Fantasy exclusivity. And also, like, so yeah, it was a problem. But at the same time, the Nintendo 64 had a solid lineup of first party titles and rare titles, and I think percentage wise, it's got a higher hit percentage than most systems. For the only 300 games it has, a good amount of them are quality. So sales might have hurt them, but legacy wise, I don't think the average person knows how bad the Nintendo 64 did. So yeah, I think I'm siding on the 3DS side of things here.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that, because I remember when it launched and they announced the price, and I went, nope. And then I eventually did get one, because the 3D without glasses was kind of cool, like 3D Land. I really liked that. That was fun.
Like I said, they recovered, and I love my 3DS. I still play it.
I love mine too.
It's a great system. It's just, unfortunately, they really shot themselves in the foot with how they decided to put it out into the world. And then the Wii U showing up not too soon after, and the Wii U was only $50 more. So it's I don't know. This was a really crazy 5-year period for Nintendo.
My defense of the cartridge thing is actually the Switch, because it's just wild to me that they went back to cartridges.
Yeah, but those make sense, because nowadays a lot of games can release without the whole game being on the cartridge, and the I don't know, they hold a lot more than what a Nintendo 64 cartridge would hold.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. And then
and they're not expensive to produce. That's the thing. It's not really comparing, like a Nintendo 64 cartridge costing them $30 per release. I don't know what the Switch tabs cost, but it can't be that much.
Well, it's still more that it's still enough that like some developers
Yeah.
are looking away from doing physical versions, and
Yeah, but that's an option they didn't
and,
have back in the
and
64 day.
right. Um, I I think for the Switch, I wonder how much, like, they went back to cartridges. I wonder how much of that was just the hardware and the
Mhm.
fact that like putting discs inside of like
Portable
a
console.
a portable console is just always bad. And then if you're always need to be connected to the dock or something, there's just not
Mm-hmm.
a good solution. I wonder how much of that there is. And Kevin, shout out to you, Kevin. You're the one who came up with the list and the rankings. And to disclose, like, the N64 one is pretty far down on the list. So I think if these two were to match up like in March Madness, this I think this would be a blowout. Um,
Yeah.
because like in the end, I mean, like more like in the end, yes, we went back to cartridges, and the preservation of cartridges from this generation are way better than any other gaming or just flat out media from this generation. So while we might have not gotten certain games or games to a certain quality, I don't think it's mattered over time. And and yeah, and then if you're looking at how the GameCube did, I mean, we could have added that as a mistake as well. Like, we could have put right next to N64 staying with cartridges, GameCube going to CDs, but trying to make their own proprietary CD, or
Mhm.
Yeah,
you
not
know,
having a DVD player would be the mistake the GameCube made, because that's how PlayStation 2 was able. The GameCube
That
is technically, a lot of people don't know this, the GameCube is more powerful than the PlayStation 2. It's one of the only times Nintendo's had the more powerful system on the market.
but it don't
It just
play
didn't have,
movies.
exactly, it didn't have a DVD player, so it hurt them.
I mean, my final thing with the cartridges thing is just, I don't know. I just have a lot of nostalgia of putting a cartridge in to play a game. So
and if
there
you
wasn't
have
as
it,
much horrible anticipation as once you get the CDs, the PS2, for example, and you're like putting it in, like, please read it. Please read it. It's just like, oh my God. So I think that was the shift in gaming too. And that was kind of a nice thing with the Switch is here's a cartridge. It's like, it's probably going to work. I'm like, okay, good.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to end this segment with a comment that I found while I was doing my research. So this was posted. Let me see. When did the Wii U launch? The Wii U launched in
100 years ago.
November of 2012. Okay, so this comment was posted in March of 2012. So like gearing up for the Wii U launch, right? Gamer Dude posted, I agree with all of it. They were already talking about the 3DS launch being bad in 2012. And this person posted out an article about it. I agree with all of these. So let's hope Nintendo gets the Wii U right, or they will have a huge problem on their hands.
Mhm.
And unfortunately
They
for Gamer Dude, we know how that
only
turned out.
knew.
Yeah. All right. I just thought that was an interesting piece of history. I think it's
I
unanimous.
am.
I think we're picking 3DS for the bigger mistake. Let me see what we're doing next week. Oh, did you have something to say,
I am
Harrison?
so I was gonna say I am so excited about next week's matchup. I'm not gonna say a lot about next week's matchup. I'm just gonna let you and Sean talk about it, because I think you all are gonna have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, it might be all we talk about next week. So the matchup for next week is Nintendo not purchasing Rare versus the Mario Brothers 1993 live action movie.
Them
Both
fighting words.
mistakes. I mean, you can like the movie, Sean, but I think even you could admit it was not, them not having quality control over it was a problem.
We'll see. We'll see next week.
I know what I'm picking. Yeah, no spoilers, but
I think if you read the notes I took on the subjects, you'll see some key insights. Anyway, that's this week. 3DS moves on to battle in the rest of the tournament, and now we can finally talk about the game everyone saw in the title of this podcast and why they probably downloaded this and are listening to us for the first time ever. Hi, new listeners. Is you wanted some Majora's Mask content, right?
I guess they did, right?
Yeah. So
they answered us.
Yeah. Majora's Mask came out in April of 2000 in Japan and October of 2000 in North America, just in time for Christmas. And basically, the story behind this game is kind of interesting. After the release of Ocarina of Time, there was a new version of Ocarina of Time set to release for the 64 disk drive. A lot of people call this Uru Zelda because that's how it was printed in magazines, things like that. And that ended up never getting released. It was going to be like remixed versions of the dungeons and a few, like maybe a few new items to use, stuff like that. So basically, Eiji Aonuma, is that how you say his name?
That's pretty good.
All right, Aonuma. So Aonuma, one of the dungeon designers for Ocarina of Time, was given a challenge by Shigeru Miyamoto to basically create a game jam a game together. So he had to get this this thing together. In an Iwata Asks, he said he admitted not being able to get into the Master Quest project, the Ocarina of Time thing, but he wanted to design new dungeons not in Ocarina of Time at all and started doing them in his spare time. And this led to him basically saying like, well, I could put these in a whole new game. So Shigeru Miyamoto gave him the challenge and said, you can make a whole new Zelda game if you can get it together within a year. So that explains why this game reuses so many assets from Ocarina of Time, is he had to make this game in a year. And honestly, I don't think that shows. There's some games out there that are rushed through the development process, and you can see it. I think this totally feels like he had as much time as he needed.
This holds up better than games that are in development now for 6 years.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
They release it. It's like, oh, it doesn't work. But yeah, I wish this would. I mean, I guess you couldn't really do it now, and people do mods and everything. But imagine if like the company was like, "Hey, you know that game that did really well? Yeah, can you make another one next year, but use the same assets, but make a different game?" I don't know if anyone else could do it, because that's what's so cool about it, is it doesn't feel like it's the same assets to me. Like, I mean, I know visually looking at them, it's like, oh, that's this, that's that. But the way they did it, you really wouldn't immediately go, oh, those are bosses from Ocarina of Time that are NPCs now.
Yeah, I really like that they also used unused assets from Ocarina of Time, like stuff that they had made for the game that didn't make it into the game. So things like the Igor statue, which was in every Zelda game up to Ocarina of Time, and then it's for some reason missing from that game. It's like, oh, they did make one, and it's here in Majora's Mask, and you can see what they made for Ocarina of Time there. So it's kind of like getting to play with unused assets.
And I do like that the linking of the games is so small, because I this is just a thing I wish they would do more, is have games not set in Hyrule.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that would have made Tears of the Kingdom feel a little different if it wasn't in Hyrule. But I like that the only linking factor is the ocarina. Mm-hmm. So once you go through the whole thing, and the Skull Kid steals it, and you get it back. Epona, but the main
fairy
thing.
Sword.
The main
Sorry.
thing
Sorry.
is the ocarina.
Yeah,
'Cause
the
it's
main
like
thing. You're right.
you get that back. You remember the Song of Time and everything. So I think the way they built everything in it was really, really cool. And one of the things I thought was impressive, though, with the emulation, you don't really get it because they take out the fog and stuff. But I feel like Majora's Mask is way more an expressive game than Ocarina of Time. I know that they don't have super detailed models and they can't do all sorts of crazy stuff, but even just like something simple when you talk to the Happy Mask salesman and they just keep changing what he's doing while he's talking to you,
Oh,
and it's
he's
just
by far one of the creepiest characters of the whole franchise. Like
it's just
Mhm.
to this day.
unsettling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that holds up. Or even the way the Skull Kid moves at the beginning, because
Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't like, oh, that's actually way creepier than I remember it being.
It's
So
like
I
one of
feel
those
like it.
J horror movies. J the
Yeah, he's
yeah.
very Japanese horror, and like I said, like you get that cryptic part later where he's like, "Oh, Epona," and you're like, "What did you do to Epona?" Like,
Yeah.
but I think it gets the mood so good that you don't even care it's reusing assets, and then the way they structure it really helps it too. Because I mean, you get new dungeons, you get new bosses, so none of that is reused, and I feel like they tell a more interesting story than Ocarina of Time between the time travel and then just the bad guy's not a bad guy for the traditional reasons. So it gives it a little more depth than you would usually get in a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then I know you and I were talking about this that the masks unfortunately don't do more than what they have you use them for. But even that's just an interesting concept of instead of items necessarily for dungeons, you need specific masks to get through them. So I think that was an interesting direction to go too.
And the marketing for this game was cuckoo bananas. Like it's insane that Nintendo let them that only in the 90s, or I guess the year 2000, would they let them market a game like this where if anyone out there is unfamiliar, go look up television ads for Majora's Mask. They create this like because of the apocalyptic storytelling that
Mm,
is in the game, they create these ads that look like they're for a disaster movie, and they're really effective. Like I don't know what it is about them, but they really do elicit some emotion when you're watching them, and it's like this is just a commercial for a video game. I shouldn't be feeling this much right now.
and
There's
oh yeah, go ahead, Harrison.
no, I was gonna say like there's just tons of emotion in Zelda games. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, because Kevin and I were kind of talking about this too, but I think it's funny. Like the side quests in this game are kind of mundane stuff, but
Mhm.
you're like actually engaged to do it. So it's not like, oh, you gotta go defeat so and so and get this so you can get in the dungeon. It's no, you gotta go get this thing for this guy so he stops, crying or something. It's like,
Right.
okay.
And you get Kathy's quest in there, which is probably my favorite side quest in any Zelda game. It takes you through every like location practically in the game. It takes you have to do it twice to get the two different rewards at the end. And it's got this powerfully emotional story being told. The story of Kathy's side quest is
Mhm.
more detailed than some stories for the main story in some of the Zelda games.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is there's a lot more depth, I guess, to what's going on in
Yeah,
Majora's Mask.
yeah, it feels like a real world. Like these people all really, every one of them has, you know who they are, you know?
But that's another thing where it's like it doesn't feel like a game that was almost made on a dare. Like
Yeah.
there's polish there.
Yeah. I'm not so as far as the time crunch goes, I'm not sure like it's incredibly impressive what you can do, what they could do with the amount of time they had and the
Oh yeah.
resources they had. Um, but I see it after the fact. So if in a hypothetical, I could go back in time and see what a game would have looked like as a 3 year development, and then they had a 7-day cycle, I think, as you mentioned.
I don't think we mentioned it yet, but that is in my notes here. The original loop wasn't 3 days; it was 7 days,
Oh,
Right. So,
really?
so I don't. Yeah. So I don't know. I just.
which would have
It's
given you
hard.
7 temples. Like
It's
most
hard to
Zelda games
Mhm.
have.
say. It's hard to say after the fact. Um, would it have been any better or worse? All I can say is that I know that with the amount of time given, they made an absolute outstanding game. Uh, I'll include here that I mean the critical acclaim of the Zelda series is more impressive than any franchise that I know of. Out of the top 50 games in Metacritic, 7 of them are Zelda games, and Majora's Mask is 6 out of those 7
Oh, wow.
at number 42.
Yeah, a lot of people
So
did not like the 3 day cycle
yeah,
factor.
but that's number 42 out of all games, ladies and gentlemen.
That,
Like
Yeah.
that's that's impressive.
like it's not that far off. Number 44 was also a Zelda game. Do you want to guess what that was?
Well, I know Ocarina of Time's their top, or at least it was.
Number
I don't know
one.
if it still is. Yeah. So number 44, I'm going to say A Link to the Past.
Link to the Past is not on Metacritic because it's too
Oh, yeah.
old.
No, you're
Yeah.
But
right. Sorry.
but I will include Link to the Past Four Swords is number 41.
Okay, so 44, Twilight Princess.
Yep, you
Okay.
got it. You got it. Yep.
I feel like there's a
Um,
big crossover since they're both darker in tone Zelda games. A lot of people who like Majora's Mask also love Twilight Princess.
That, that was the thing too. I'm like, oh, this is the first of 3 times they've done kind of this thing, and I went, no, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess really aren't anything alike, so never mind.
right.
Yeah.
Wind Waker is number 29 on the list, right next to 28, which is Tears of the Kingdom. So, as far as overall acclaim of these games goes, it's I think it's unlike. I mean, you can compare it to Final Fantasy and Mario and whatever, but I think it's unlike any other franchise, really. And I think out of all of the games that we've reviewed, besides maybe Mario 3 or something, I think this is the most referenced game with other video games. Like, they use Majora's Mask in every Zelda game after this. I'm exaggerating, but
No, because Breath of the Wild had the DLC
Tears of the
outfit.
Kingdom
Yeah.
I
Tears of the
think
Kingdom has it. Um
It's
it's
in
funny for
A
a
Link
game
Between
that's
Worlds. That there's a Majora's Mask in A Link Between Worlds.
for a game that's supposedly so maligned by the fan base. It gets an awful lot of love in the other games. So
I don't know if it's maligned by the fan base. I think it's maligned by people who are outside the fan base who couldn't handle the 3 day cycle. That's the most common complaint I hear is like, oh, I couldn't do the 3 day cycle. So I think
I
hardcore Zelda fans, though, it typically is ranked in top fives.
I think once you get the flow of the game, the 3 day cycle thing isn't even like a stressor or anything.
No, in fact, once you have the song where you can slow time down, you have too much time. And I'll finish a dungeon and then have like a whole day left over to just
hang
like
out.
get some resources. Yeah. I think one of the reasons this is one of my favorite Zelda games is the fact that there's only 4 dungeons too. So, so obviously each dungeon gives you a heart at the end, like any other Zelda game, but that only
Hmm.
gives you 4 hearts. So they had to create so many side quests for this game to give you what is, I think still, well, unless you count the shrines in Breath of the Wild, the most heart pieces in a Zelda game, because they didn't have a full set of dungeons to work with. So you need more heart pieces to make up that heart count. And they have so many side quests in this game, and side quests are always my favorite thing to do. So yeah, I think that's a big contributing factor.
I think you get to know the characters really well in this game too, because of that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it adds to the storytelling and everything else. But I I don't know. There's just
Did any of you catch the Star Fox Easter egg in the mask screen?
there's a
What's that?
Star Fox Easter egg.
So the second row of masks makes up the Star Fox team. The Keaton mask is Fox. Then you've got the bird mask is Falco. The bunny ears, Peppy. The toad mask, Slippy. And then I've seen people argue that this counts or not, but there's a pig mask at the end for could be Pigma.
Okay,
And yeah, there's the Star Fox team in the second row.
that's a
I didn't
cool
know
thing.
that.
I didn't even notice that. So.
My
Do
only
you-
critique of this game, and I got to get it off my chest every time I discuss this game, is I think they really dropped the ball on the swords. The Razor Sword, super cool, such a prominent part of the advertising, and you only get to hold it for like a couple of days before you upgrade it to the Gilded Sword. And it's the better sword, and the Gilded Sword's ugly, and the Great Fairy Sword is ugly. They're like the two worst looking swords in the entire franchise to me. And I really wish you got to hold on to that Razor Sword. So -1 point for that.
See, I thought you were gonna get on the 3DS remake.
That's what I wanted to ask about. Like, do you remember your initial reactions to the 3DS remake?
My initial reactions were like all the quality of life improvements were great. You being able to save more often was great. And like they improved the bomber's notebook, and they even have, I can't remember if you could warp to a specific time. I think you could. I think they changed it so like you could, they allowed you to basically speed up time to a specific time. So you didn't have to stand there and wait for things to happen. So that was good. The only thing is, the way they changed all 4 bosses of the 4 dungeons is they made them more uniform, and it kind of made them less special. They gave them all a giant eyeball to attack, which like some of them you had to trigger the eyeball to come out, but it was still there. And I feel like it took away from the uniqueness of each boss. It especially made I forget his name, the guy who dances in the bats, the first boss. It made him a lot less special in my opinion. So, yeah, I did not like the changes to the bosses. I did not like that there was an area that basically tells you where to go if you get stuck, which is, another thing Nintendo does to make their games too easy for younger players sometimes.
Again, I think that's a modern thing.
Yeah, and it should have been like optional. Like I know I can just ignore it and not use it, but I would have liked it to be something I could turn on or off.
That was around the time they started the. I think 3DS was the beginning of it, but they might have done it on the Wii. Like if you died too many times, the game would play itself for you.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, I don't understand the point of this, but okay.
But what else do I think of it? It's been a while since I've played it because the boss thing really did kind of ruin it for me. But there are some genuine improvements there. It's just the boss thing really, really ruins it for me.
Majora's Mask is 8th best selling of all time and 9th if you include the remakes at 6.8 million copies, which is just it's a lot. I mean that's just a lot for the time. For it being, do we call it a sequel or whatever we call it, but
it's a sequel because it references the other game.
So it overall did really well. I've done a Majora's Mask run in Breath of the Wild where like basically I get the paraglider, I go get Majora's Mask, and then I try to complete all 120 shrines as fast as possible. Well, relatively. I mean, I'm not like timing myself, but just I think the lore for Majora's Mask has always been very, very cool. I think like this game came out when I was 11 years old, and at least in my friend groups, Majora's Mask was always seen as like the cool, more dark, more edgy, more like the cool kids played this one, and the blah 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 played this one. Like, I've always thought the lore and just the overall vibe of this game was cool. Was very cool, despite not really enjoying playing it that much. I'll be honest. Like, I I have so much love and respect for this game, but for me playing it, I don't like it as much as other Zelda games. I guess I'll put it that way. I do feel a little bit stressed still sometimes.
Well, we'll get into how much you liked it in a second with the ranking, but I can feel us winding down here, and I want to point out two more things that I had in my notes, which is unused content, which we don't normally go into, but I think these are really cool. So in the original game design, in the files for the game, there's a human Link mask. It just looks like a Link face. And it's unknown what it was going to be used for, but it was most likely part of basically you were originally going to be able to use a mask to become adult Link from Ocarina of Time, and they would just reuse that model. And it would probably have been used for things like getting into the milk bar or something you needed to be an adult for. No one really knows, but they took it out of the game. And they basically redesigned that character model and redesigned that mask to become the Fierce Deity mask, which also was something you were able to use in the entire overworld at one point, but now you can only use it at the very end of the game. So I thought that was really cool. Just think about being adult Link in this game, like Ocarina of Time. And the other thing that I think is worth looking up if you haven't done it is there's cut content, cut animations for when Link is learning different abilities from the fairies. They're adorable. There are these cut little animations where like he's like working out. Like in one he's doing push-ups, and another one he's doing like sit-ups. And then there's one where like the fairy is like holding his arm and showing him like how to put his arm out straight so he can do the little magic twirl that he does. They're great animations. I don't know why they didn't make it into the game because they're very detailed and very adorable.
I think Link mask would have been creepy.
Well, I would have liked the Fierce Deity to be just usable in the overworld. Like you get that mask by collecting all the masks in the game. So it's like, it's a reward, but it's a reward you can literally only use in one room. So I would like to be able to use that on the overworld and throw my magic laser discs at people that come out of your sword when you use it. So yeah, let's get into rankings. I'll just jump right out ahead and say I'm putting this is my new number 2.
Wow.
A Link to the Past still ranks higher to me. And this is not my number 2 Zelda, but it's my number 2 Zelda that we've reviewed so far. Okay. So, and some of them we won't even review because they're not on Switch Online. But yeah, this is my new number 2 game. Below A Link to the Past and above ToeJam and Earl.
Wow. So this is your second. How many Zelda games do you have in your top 10 now?
Let's see. A Link to the Past, Majora's Mask, Minish Cap, Ocarina of Time, Link's Awakening. So 5 of my top 10.
Wow.
and we've only reviewed 5. This
yeah. Oh, it's my favorite franchise. You know, it's my ride or die.
So 5 of the 10. I'm pretty similar to you in that aspect. But this one's going to be number 11 for me. Again, it's not a game I'm ever going to be finished with. I don't think like in my lifetime. I think it's a game I'll always go back to. It's not a game I enjoy as much as other Zelda games. So yeah, it's going to be number 11, and which means 5 of my top 11 are Zelda games.
Okay, so 5 of your top 11 instead of 10. Not that different.
Yeah,
So
the order's quite different. Yeah, exactly.
this was one of the harder games to rank for me. I like the game more than Ocarina of Time, but I feel like Ocarina of Time's a better gameplay wise, if that makes sense.
See, I had a hard time. I was comparing it to Minish Cap a lot because that's my number 4, and I was like, do I like this more than Minish Cap? Like it, I had to do a lot of thinking there because they're very different games. But anyway, go on.
So that I put Majora at 21. So it's under Ocarina and it's above Jet Force Gemini. Um, it's really good. I really like it, but I don't know. There's just I can't quite put it higher than that. I mean, what do I get? Three Zelda games in my top 10, but who knows how long that'll last. But no, it's just a weird instance. Like I like Majora's Mask more, but I think the other one's a better game. So
Yeah, I think my top 10 will remain dominated by Zelda no matter how many we do here because I've said before, I think if I had to, I could cut my video game playing down to just Zelda and Final Fantasy and be okay. But yeah, all right, let's randomize this, see what we're playing next week. Next week, Super Nintendo game I've never played before. I think this is a Japanese only. It's a Super Nintendo Super Puyo Puyo 2. Is Super Puyo Puyo on the service? Do we have
probably
that?
not.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm looking right now.
Super Puyo Puyo 2. All right.
I don't even see this in the randomizer. How did it pick it? That's interesting. What? Oh, because I'm not looking. I'm looking under P instead of S. That's why. All right, there it is. Super Puyo Puyo 2, because Super is in the title. All right, yeah. Okay, so 1 is not there. It's just Super Puyo Puyo 2. All right, I know nothing about this game. It's
I'm bad
Japanese.
at Puyo Puyo, so I know that.
I like. I like Puyo Puyo. I think there's a Puyo Puyo for Dreamcast. I don't know.
None of us know. This is going to be all our first. I think it's a puzzle game. That's all I really know.
It's a puzzle game.
Okay. I knew that much, but I don't know how it plays. I don't know if it's a Tetris or if it's like match the colors or if it's switch the things or what. So, yeah, we'll find out next week and we'll rank it and you'll tell us we're wrong. And you can tell us we're wrong by emailing us at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. We're on Reddit. Search our Nintendo Therapy subreddit, and we're on X at Nintendo Therapy. Just keep in mind we're Nintendo fans, not Nintendo experts, so we probably got 120 million things wrong. And we will see you next week for more of Nintendo's mistakes, more of the Puyo Puyo, more of the news, and other stuff. Goodbye.
Well put.